Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 7 o'clock main news. In tonight's headlines, 30 candidates register on the final day of registration for the National Assembly by-elections, bringing the total number of candidates to 134. Abdel Fattah al-Sisi leads Egypt's presidential election by a huge margin, with official results to be announced in the coming days. US President Barack Obama gives a wide-ranging foreign policy chief in which he pledges aid to Syria's opposition groups. And pro-Russian rebels in eastern Ukraine shoot down an army helicopter near the town of Sloviansk, killing 14 people. The First Deputy Premier and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sheikh Sabah al-Khalid al-Hamad al-Sabah, met in Algiers today with the Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif on the sidelines of the current 17th meeting of the Non-Aligned Movement Ministerial Council. Talks in the meeting concentrated on the upcoming visit of His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Sabah al-Ahmed al-Jabir al-Sabah, to the Islamic Republic of Iran and the current preparations being made for that visit. The two ministers also discussed means of promoting bilateral relations in different fields. The meeting was attended by Kuwait's ambassador to Algeria, Saud Faisal al-Doueish, the director of the First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister's Office, Ambassador Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Nasser al-Mohammed al-Sabah, and a number of senior officials at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The First Deputy Premier and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sheikh Sabah al-Khalid al-Hamad al-Sabah, met in Algiers today with Egypt's Foreign Minister Dr. Nabil Fahmy on the sidelines of the current 17th Ministerial Council meeting of the Non-Aligned Movement. Talks in the meeting covered ways of expanding cooperation between the two countries in all domains. They also discussed other issues and development of mutual interest to both countries. The meeting was attended by Kuwait's ambassador to Algeria, Saud Faisal al-Doueish, the director of the First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister's Office, Ambassador Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Nasser al-Mohammed al-Sabah, and a number of senior officials at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister Sheikh Sabah al-Khalid al-Hamad al-Sabah met in Algiers today with the Speaker of the Constitutional Council, Murad Madlesi. Talks in the meeting focused on the existing relations between Kuwait and Algeria. The General Directorate for Election Affairs at the Ministry of Interior has concluded the 10th and final day of candidacy for the by-election for the National Assembly's 14th legislative term. During the final day, the Deputy Premier, Minister of Interior and Acting Minister of Awqaf and Islamic Affairs, Sheikh Mohammed al-Khalid al-Hamad al-Sabah, toured the Election Affairs Department to inspect the progress of the electoral process. Sarah Glab has more in this report.
The Ministry of Interior has concluded the 10th and final day of candidate registration for the by-elections for the National Assembly's 14th legislative term to fill 5 vacant seats in the 50-seat Member Parliament.
I'm happy to declare we concluded the last day for the process, for the registration process for the supplementary election for National Assembly. Today we admitted at the department 30 nominees, 28 male and 2 females, so 30 candidates for the final.
As the doors closed on the 10th day of registration, a total of 30 candidates submitted their nominations, with 3 candidates in the 2nd constituency, 13 in the 3rd constituency, and 14 candidates in the 4th constituency. This puts the total number of candidates that have registered so far at 134, including 7 female nominations and 1 withdrawal. The election will only be carried out in the 2nd and 3rd constituencies, with 2 seats each to fill and 1 seat from the 4th constituency. The Interior Ministry reminded that candidates who wish to withdraw have until the 18th of June to do so, 1 week before voting day. The Ministry has designated 3 police stations for withdrawal, 1 for each constituency, with Shamia Police Station for the 2nd constituency, Khaldiya Police Station for the 3rd constituency, and Hamariya Police Station for the 4th constituency. Touring election facilities ahead of the June 26 by-election polling, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Interior and Acting Minister of Awqaf and Islamic Affairs expressed his satisfaction with the level of preparedness at the facilities, promising that all will go well as planned for both candidates and voters. Among the facilities toured were the Board of Elections Department and the Media Centre tracking the course of the by-election. The Minister indicated that all the personnel from the Ministry of Interior were ready to do their utmost to make the occasion a pleasant one for the voters and the candidates. The date of voting for the by-election is set for June 26th, just 2 days before the start of the Holy Muslim fasting month of Ramadan. From the Election Affairs Department in Kuwait, this is Sarah Glubb reporting for English News.
As part of the procedures that aim at strengthening and enhancing bilateral relations between the State of Kuwait and the Republic of Greece, a media delegation from Greece paid a visit to the Americani Cultural Centre. The visit came as part of the preparations for the upcoming visit of the First Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Hamad Al-Sabah to the Republic of Greece. Hiba Abdurrahman was there and has this report.
As part of the visit that the Greek media delegation has paid to Kuwait, an organized tour was set for them to visit the Americani Cultural Center, which is part of the Dar al-Athar al-Islamiyya known as DAI. The visit included a tour in the 4 exhibitions that are shown there, in addition to a short movie narrating the story of the Americani Center since its establishment.
We had a very nice tour and we were shown all the artifacts. We are leaving from the museum with the sense of respect for the civilization, but also there was also a funny part about the Hellenistic period, because there's also some artifacts from our history, and that brings me to the conclusion that big civilizations come together, and that brings us to the present age where my country is coming out of the crisis, and at the same time Kuwait is a country in the Arab world that has a role to play, and our bilateral relations are very good, and we look forward to them being more strengthened in the coming days when a delegation from Kuwait will be visiting Athens, and I hope that there will be agreements on culture, the economy, and our political and diplomatic cooperation, which has been and will continue to be nice and productive.
The DAI is a cultural institution that hosts artistic and cultural activities and events since its establishment in 1983. Its role has developed to become a recognized international cultural authority. It also works with the National Council for Culture, Arts and Letters, or the NCCAL, to rebuild the building of the Kuwait National Museum. The visit of the Greek media delegation to Dar al-Athar al-Islamiyya, or DAI, came as part of the steps undertaken to strengthen and enhance the bilateral relations and ties between the State of Kuwait and the Republic of Greece. From the Americani Cultural Center, this is Hiba Abdurrahman reporting for English News.
Provisional results suggest that former military chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is poised to win an overwhelming majority of votes in Egypt's presidential election. Polls closed on Wednesday after voting was extended by 1 day due to low turnout, but initial reports suggest that only around 40% of registered voters actually cast a ballot. Election officials said they will announce the final results no later than June 5th, although state media is already predicting a landslide victory for Sisi. Preliminary statistics released by the Election Commission showed that only about 21 million people, or around 40% of registered voters, had cast their ballots as of Wednesday evening. Sisi is believed to have gathered more than 90% of total votes, with the other candidate Hamdin Sabahi winning no more than 3%. In a major foreign policy address, U.S. President Barack Obama said he will work with Congress to ramp up U.S. support for Syrian opposition groups that are the best alternative to President Bashar al-Assad. In a commencement address at the U.S. Military Academy in West Point, New York, Obama laid out a broad approach to foreign affairs for the remainder of his presidency that shifts the fight against terrorism from Afghanistan to more diffuse threats elsewhere in the world. Obama's tendency to rely on diplomacy and steer clear of foreign entanglements has drawn fire from opposition Republicans in Congress who would prefer a more robust approach. One of those areas is Syria, but Obama defended his decision not to intervene militarily there and expressed a willingness to expand assistance to Syrian opposition groups who are trying to oust President Bashar al-Assad.
As president, I made a decision that we should not put American troops into the middle of this increasingly sectarian war. And I believe that is the right decision. But that does not mean we shouldn't help the Syrian people stand up against a dictator who bombs and starves his own people. And in helping those who fight for the right of all Syrians to choose their own future, we are also pushing back against the growing number of extremists who find safe haven in the chaos. So with the additional resources I'm announcing today, we will step up our efforts to support Syria's neighbors.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says settlement projects in Jerusalem and other areas will not be halted. Israel keeps breaking international law which considers the West Bank and East Jerusalem occupied territories taken by Israel in 1967 and views all Jewish settlement building on the land as illegitimate. From the West Bank, Fatma Abdel Karim has more.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu came out once again with a new statement, saying settlement building in Jerusalem will not be stopped, and added there will be more projects to be carried out in the city. The statements come as the chances for resuming negotiations narrow down significantly and following new tenders for settlement units in Jerusalem after the U.S. failed to push Israel for a halt in settlement activity.
The messages of Netanyahu are very clear. He doesn't want peace. He doesn't want a Palestinian state. He doesn't want a solution. And anybody who is still waiting for negotiations to produce anything is mistaken. First, we have to change the balance of power. Without changing the balance of power on the ground, there will be no change. And there will be no useful negotiations.
Palestinian leaders condemned very strongly the Israeli announcements and their latest settlement plans. The PNA called for urgent international intervention, particularly towards Jerusalem, and warned of further escalation and serious attempts to Judaize the holy city.
Netanyahu and the Israeli government, they feel that nothing will push them to recognize and to act according to their legal obligation, because there is no political will. They feel that there is no political will from the international community.
Many believe the actions of the Israeli government are meant to maintain the precarious right-wing coalition, attempting to prevent an internal breakdown within the Israeli society. Eliminating chances for peace, the Israeli government seems to be taking up its policy to provoke Palestinians through not only its administrative measures, but also possible military escalation. Fatma Abdel Karim, Kuwait TV, Ramallah, Palestine.
Rebels in eastern Ukraine shot down a government military helicopter today amid heavy fighting around Sloviansk, killing 14 soldiers, including a general. Acting President Alexander Turchinov told Parliament in Kiev that rebels used a portable air defense missile to bring down the helicopter. Turchinov said the helicopter was flying troops in for a rotation to a hill outside Sloviansk, where Ukrainian forces have set up positions. Sloviansk, which is not far from the Russian border, has become the epicenter of fighting between pro-Russia insurgents and government forces in recent weeks. Its residential areas have regularly come under mortar shelling from government forces, causing civilian casualties and prompting some residents to flee. The leaders of Russia, Belarus and Kazakhstan created an economic union today intending to boost cooperation between the former Soviet neighbors, a pact which was at the source of the crisis in the Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin said the Eurasian Economic Union, which Moscow has pushed Ukraine to join, helping spark the worst crisis in relations between Russia and the West since the Cold War, would take the country's cooperation to a new level while respecting their sovereignty. During talks in Kazakhstan's capital, Astana, Putin said the pact would allow the countries to exploit their economic potential and strengthen their positions in global markets. In addition to free trade, the development of the customs union coordinates the members' financial system and regulates industrial and agricultural policies, along with their labor markets and transport systems. The deal stops short of introducing a single currency and delays the creation of a common energy market. Hundreds of Thai troops and police sealed off one of Bangkok's busiest intersections today in an attempt to block a planned protest 1 week after the military coup. Truckloads of soldiers blocked all incoming roads to the Capital Victory Monument, prompting shops in the normally congested area to close amid concerns of a crackdown on anti-coup protesters coming almost daily to defy a ban on political gatherings. The large deployment came a day after hundreds of protesters gathered at the monument and outnumbered soldiers. Across the capital, dozens gathered at Thammasat University to denounce the coup, while the generally small number of protesters who planned to gather again today called for a mass rally on Sunday. Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak declared today that the search would continue for the missing Malaysia Airlines flight MH370. Razak, who was meeting with Chinese Premier Li Keqiang in Beijing, said they owe it to the families of the passengers to continue the search. His comments came after investigators concluded that an area where acoustic signals were detected is not the final resting place of the plane. The search coordinator said today that an unmanned submersible found no trace of the plane. The Joint Agency Coordination Center declared that the U.S. Navy's Bluefin 21 finished its final underwater mission in the southern Indian Ocean yesterday after scouring 850 square kilometers. The Dasman Diabetes Institute, the school oral health program of Kuwait and Kuwait University, Faculty of Dentistry, Kuwait University and the Forsyth Institute of Boston, USA have combined their talents to conduct a clinical study of obesity in Kuwaiti children. In this study, the Kuwait Healthy Life Study, over 8,000 children participated, starting with a first visit in 2011-2012 and a second visit in 2013-2014. Here is more in this report by Salim Al-Kindari.
In this symposium entitled The Future of Diabetes Prevention in Kuwait, 4 speakers outlined their vision of new directions proposed as a result of 4 years into a 5-year study.
And I'm here today to participate in a symposium that will be held with 4 speakers. And what we will try to do is to outline from our point of view what we feel preventative measures would be applicable to the people of Kuwait to control the problem of overweight in children. Well, there are many different types of results. In my own research that I will review, I will discuss some of the findings that we came upon in studying analysis of saliva. In our case, we took no blood samples from these children, and we studied almost 8,000 children in this study. And from that, we have found that one of the important observations is that the insulin levels of obese children is 3 times higher than normal children. And we think that that may have something to do with the problem of obesity. In fact, we find that almost 90% of the obese children have elevated insulin levels. And we think this is an important observation. We have also seen that there is a 12% increase in obesity in the 2 years that we have studied this, from 2011 to 2014, a 17% increase in high blood pressure, and a almost 50% increase in low good cholesterol, which is an important measure of the potential of atherosclerosis in the future. So we really feel like we're on to a very, very important area, and we're hoping that we can offer some suggestions on how to cure and deal with the problem at large.
So this is the main idea, 2 things, school oral health and the project with Dasman. Dasman is very, very helpful institute for this, and also dental school here is very much involved with us. So there are 4 groups.
It was found that insulin levels in obese children were 3 times that of normal weight children. It is suggested that high blood insulin levels may be an important trigger of the weight gain seen in these children, and potentially a factor to reduce risk of diabetes. Various institutes had collaborated here at Desmond Diabetes Institute to tackle issues of diabetes prevention and the future of it in Kuwait. Obesity is one of the problems that Kuwaiti children face, and it is on the increase, and it must be addressed and solutions must be found. Among them is exercise. From Desmond Diabetes Institute, this is Salim Kendiri reporting for the English News.
For a chance to see our reports again, please visit our YouTube channel at MOI Kuwait News. And to recap tonight's news, here are the headlines once again. 30 candidates register on the final day of registration for the National Assembly by-elections, bringing the total number of candidates to 134. Abdel Fattah al-Sisi leads Egypt's presidential election by a huge margin, with official results to be announced in the coming days. US President Barack Obama gives a wide-ranging foreign policy chief in which he pledges aid to Syria's opposition groups. And pro-Russian rebels in eastern Ukraine shoot down an army helicopter near the town of Slavyansk, killing 14 people. Thank you for joining us.